Coming up today on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, Trent alongside Biz. First time in a month we've got together talking a little Hawkeye football and basketball. Some news on the basketball front. Patrick McCaffery stepping away from the game for a while with anxiety issues. We'll get into that. Wrap up the football season and Iowa basketball right the ship. All coming up today on Locked On Hawkeyes.
Our Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I'm Trent Condon. That's my buddy Biz as we talk the world of Hawkeyes with you. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen each and every day, available wherever you get podcasts. And you can also find us on YouTube and see Biz waving to the camera over there. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button and help us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. As we sit here early January, Biz, good to talk again. How was holidays?
It was good. Yeah, it's been a while, Trent. I was beginning to worry you'd forgot about me, but I'm still alive and kicking. So, no, holidays were good. And when we don't talk for a while, you realize just how crazy the roller coaster that is Iowa athletics is. There's a lot that goes on when you skip a month. There's basketball craziness, there's football craziness, there's NIL issues, there's recruiting issues. You got to give it to Iowa athletics. It's never boring. So
that is very true. And obviously here in Des Moines, I cover both Iowa and Iowa State, and it's crazy. Yes, I'm a Hawkeye fan, and I like to talk Hawkeyes a lot more, but just the amount of information, the amount of stories that come on the Iowa side in comparison to Iowa State, it feels like it's 5-10 to 1 at times, just the amount of information that we get, and many of it negatives, but that's what we have here. You mentioned Gary Barta. For people that followed us on our old podcast, the Degenerate Hawkeyes podcast, you've certainly said your piece about the Iowa director of athletics. For our new listeners out there and people viewing us on YouTube, an overview of that one. And it feels, and what I've said here on the podcast, just kind of stuck in the old ways, right? And not willing to adapt and change. And the litigation that has gone against him certainly has got to be a big factor in that.
So it's funny, Trent. I won't waste our viewers' time with another anger rant on Gary Barta, but
it'll come at some point.
At this point, it's just kind of like beating your head against the wall. But our good friend Beef had a theory that maybe Bart is crazy like a fox, and maybe this whole thing with NIL was manufactured to get people to get more involved with it. Maybe he knows where he's going all along, because as you saw, they within 24 hours, all of a sudden magically, I got an email as a ticket holder saying, "Oh, by the way, you should donate." So maybe it was maybe he's just under the philosophy of there's no such there's no such thing as bad news. All news is good news, Trent. Any good publicity. So I don't think that's what happened, but that's our friend Beef's philosophy, at least, that he's crazy like a fox. So.
Well, you and Beef made your way over to Lincoln for the Iowa-Nebraska game, and we're going to talk plenty of Iowa basketball here, but certainly the biggest story of the last 24 hours is Patrick McCaffery stepping away from the game, citing anxiety issues, and something that is a difficult conversation. I'll be completely honest. It's something that I'm not always comfortable talking about. And it's because, frankly, I've never dealt with anything like that. I've had a pretty good life, and I haven't had anything that has kind of brought up anxiety. It's something that I haven't dealt with, but I know plenty of people that have. And it's something where, from my perspective, I just don't feel real comfortable talking about things like that because I've never dealt with it. I don't know what it's like, but hearing and listening and talking to people that have dealt with this is a serious issue. And I know there's a lot of old school thinking out there. Oh, tough it out, right? What's the big deal? It is a big deal. And it's something that becomes more and more prevalent. That is a good thing societally, to have that conversation be something that's a lot easier to talk about. Or when these things come up, we don't hear it. I was shocked because I went online yesterday, saw the tweet that was sent out by the athletic department, the basketball team, saw a lot of the stories that were on Facebook and, the cesspool that can be Facebook and Twitter and social media in general. I was shocked the amount of outpouring of positive vibes and positive things that came out. I mean, it was 100 to 1 for any negative comment that you see. It was absolutely shocking in today's environment. But again, kind of leading to that, what I said earlier, it's good that this is out here and there's not the same stigma that there was in the past.
Yeah, I think that's, if there's a silver lining to all this, Trent, I think that's the thing, is that the stigma towards mental health issues has really changed recently. And I'm in the same boat as you. I'm fortunate enough that I've never really had significant mental health issues. I have anxiety, I have things like that, but I've never had to be medicated for it, things like that. And I just think it's a really brave and courageous decision of Patrick McCaffery to do this. It's just, I know the outpouring of support has been really great, but it's still got to be incredibly hard for him to make this decision. And I'm sure it was a decision that's been weighing on him for a long time. Trent, I've always had a soft spot for Patrick. I've always seen him as somebody that I thought he was really going to make a turn and be a potential all Big Ten player this year. And it hasn't happened. And I think this probably shows part of the reason why it hasn't happened is he's just not loving the game of basketball right now. And he's not, he's not able to put all of his focus and energy on the game of basketball. And, I just thought his statement, some of those statements, you see them, they're just canned statements. This one was just from the heart. The way he said it, you could tell he maybe 2 games, maybe 4 games, maybe never come back. And those are things, I was really impressed with not only his willingness to come out and say something, but the way he said it also. I just think, I think that speaks to, he's going to help people by doing this. And, today's a unique day for me, Trent. The whole thing with Patrick kind of hit me because today's a unique day. My oldest son turns 18 today. You've known Bodie since he was born. And
yeah.
He's 18 years old today. So
he was supposed to be named Adolphus, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I promised I was going to name my son Adolphus Shelton after the 2002 pick, but I backtracked on that. So, but it's his 18th birthday, and my wife and I talk all the time because we have him, and then we have a teenager as well. Just how insanely hard it has to be a teenager or a young adult right now. What they have to go through compared to what we did. The whole social media aspect and the cesspool that is social media. It just makes it so much more difficult. And then on top of that, when you're talking about someone like Patrick McCaffery, you've got those challenges, plus you add in the pressure of being a major college athlete and the amount of people that I'm sure are criticizing you and saying just terrible things about the fact that you're struggling right now on the court. And then you also add in the pressure of being the coach's kid as well and having to deal with everything that comes on your dad, because there are plenty of critics of Fran and plenty of vocal critics of Fran. And anybody that pays attention to Iowa basketball knows the McCaffrey family are good people. Fran has a great heart, and Patrick has a great heart, and Connor does, and all of them do. They're just, their heart's in the right place. And to me, that's, again, just going back to, it's a brave of him to do this. And I hope he takes whatever time it needs. I hope he comes back ready to play basketball at some point. But if he never does, so be it. His mental health is way more important than whether we win a few more basketball games this year.
You mentioned, all the pulls that just young people in general are dealing with at this point in time. And then on top of it, one thing that struck me last night when I was thinking a little bit more about this is obviously, and he said in the statement, it has nothing to do with his former cancer, but just think of living that life. Since you were 15 years old, anytime you feel a little bit off, anytime you feel a little bit sluggish, where your mind very well could go, is it back? Those kind of things and how that has to weigh on you. And just another component that I'm sure is something that he has to deal with on a daily basis. You get a stomach ache or you just feel off and, we pop a Tylenol and you go on. But for him, that's something that I'm sure lingers with him on top of all the other things that he is dealing with. Just an incredibly difficult time. And like you said, very brave of him to come out in this way and say those kind of things. It was a huge surprise to see this happen. But as you said, it doesn't matter about winning basketball games right now. It's about getting him in the right frame of mind. And if it's him returning to the hardwood, so be it. And if not, he's going to have a great life in front of him, you hope, and he gets everything figured out and put in a way that he is able to be happy and do the things that he absolutely wants to do.
Well, and for those, I'm assuming most of our listeners know, but for people that don't know the whole Patrick McCaffery cancer story, He was diagnosed with cancer almost the exact same time as one of his very best friends, and they both live in the same town I do. Patrick, obviously his cancer is gone or in remission, and he's doing much better, but his best friend passed away. And it's well known in the Northrop Iowa City community. I mean, his parents are unbelievable people and what they've done for youth cancer. But, I'm sure that's something that weighs on Patrick as well, as, why me? I mean, why did this happen? And that's the reason he wears number 22, is because of Fight with Flash, his friend and one of his good friends that passed away. And, all those things, you add them up. I mean, like I said, I'm sure this weighed on, and there's a lot of things weighing on Patrick McCaffery, and for him to have the courage and the willingness to come forward and say, hey, I need to take a step back, and I need to focus on my mental health, is, good for him, and I'm proud of him for doing it.
Absolutely. Needed to be said. And I'm glad we had the forum here to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a quick time out, come back on the other side, get into the football team. A bowl win against Kentucky, 21-0. We'll wrap up football season and take a look forward to what should be an interesting offseason. That's all as we continue here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football, college bowl season coming to a close with the national championship game, basketball. They got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those also at BetOnline. Always the fastest and easiest way for your sports betting information. Head to the website today or hop on your phone to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Trent Condon, Jace Bisgard back with you here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen each and every day. Football, we got a bowl win, 21-0. Offense did just enough. The season concludes at 8-5. Overall, obviously a disappointment. Opportunities at the end of the season to get to the Big Ten championship game again, but the defense was elite, and that's how this team will be remembered. An elite defense and an offense that finished 130th in the country as we put a cap on things, Biz.
Yeah, it's amazing what a bowl win does for kind of your perspective on the season. I mean, you really go out on a high note. I mean, I think, like you said, it still is a disappointing season, yes, but I think one of the things I'll remember about this season is the incredible leadership that this team had. I mean, this season could have spiraled out of control and been just an absolute train wreck. And probably should have been in some ways. I mean, the amount of negativity swirling around this program mid-season and really the entire season was crazy. And for, it's really a testament to our seniors and the players in general that they were able to maintain that focus and really end on a high note, because we've seen plenty of Iowa seasons. You go back to Drew Tate's senior year, the 2010 year, 2014 year, where things really didn't end on a high note, and we really played some bad football down the stretch. And credit to this team for keeping it together. There was never, all the negativity swirling around them. It never seemed like there was any negativity in the program. Everybody said the right things. Everybody was, they all stayed together. I mean, it would have been really easy for the defense to turn on the offense at some point this year and start pointing fingers, and they never did, or at least they didn't do it publicly. And that's a credit to your program in general. You can say what you want about the Iowa program, but they love each other. I mean, you could see there was a lot of emotion on that field at the end of that game. I mean, people like Laporta and Campbell and Moss, I mean, they love this program, and it showed. So I'm happy for them. I mean, was it the greatest year of all time? No. But, I think there's a lot of building blocks going forward. This team can be, they've got a chance. There's no reason they can't be competing for the very final Big Ten West title next year, Jen.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic goal for this team. I mean, they were on the precipice this year with that bad offense, and you anticipate it's got to be better next year. It can't get worse. I guess it could get one spot worse, but it's unthinkable that it's going to be as bad. What is it? The worst Power 5 offense since 1977, something like that. I mean, just some ridiculous numbers that have been out there with this team and what they did offensively. It'll be a huge upgrade at the quarterback position. Now, I do warn people. I think there's some people out there that think that Cade McNamara is going to be like CJ Stroud, or somebody like that. Cade McNamara is a good, solid quarterback, but we're not talking about an elite talent that's a first-round draft pick. I think maybe some people are misconstruing exactly what Cade McNamara is. He's a good quarterback for the Iowa system. He's going to take shots down the field. He is a great leader, and that's a huge component that goes along with it. But this is not going to be a guy that's going to go out next year and throw for 35 touchdowns and 3,500 yards.
Well, let's be realistic. No matter who the quarterback is, it ain't going to matter if our offensive line doesn't get better. I mean, to me, that is the end-all, be-all of Iowa football right now. Everybody can talk about anything they want. New quarterback, great defense, great special teams, improved, some playmakers, those types of things. That's fine. But if our offensive line doesn't get better, we're going to be 8-4 again. I mean, it's just football is pretty simple. I mean, if you can't block, you're not going to win consistently. And we can't block. We haven't blocked for years. It's really miraculous how many wins we do have the last 2 years, considering how awful our offensive line was for 2 straight years. So, if that doesn't get fixed, all the rest of it's kind of irrelevant. So, but Trent, you're the elephant in the room. Trent, you're in the know a lot more than I do. The elephant in the room. Is Brian Ferentz going to come back?
I believe so. I think everybody knows.
Well, okay. When I say come back, is he going to come back as the offensive coordinator?
Well, here's the part that bothers me. I really believe if you're going to displace him as offensive coordinator, and I know a lot of people would like to see him stick around as offensive line coach, tight end coach, whatever, in some capacity. I think that's so difficult for whoever the offensive coordinator becomes if you go that route. What's going to happen, with his hands are still going to be on there. And just there's so much negativity around him at the Iowa football offices with the fan base. And I don't think it's an untenable situation, but I don't think it's a good situation for any offensive coordinator to walk by. If they go in-house and if it's a guy like John Budmeyer, if they give responsibilities to somebody else, regardless of who it is, I just don't think that it's a real good situation for any offensive coordinator to walk into. And if the job does open, if they say, yeah, we're demoting Brian to offensive line coach, whatever it is, and we're out there and making a real nationwide search, what coach or what offensive coordinator wants to walk into that situation? That's the part that I struggle with. But ultimately, I believe that he will be back. And we've talked about the nepotism angle and that part of it. Obviously, that is a huge component because I think any other offensive coordinator would be shown the door. But here we are. I just don't, if they're going to do it, rip the whole Band-Aid off, right? Brian's moving away. He's looking at opportunities, whatever way you want to phrase it and word it. I think that's the best for Iowa football. Ultimately, though, I don't think that's the way it's going to play out.
Yeah, I still think he's gone. I have no insider info. There's people out there whispering in my ear about it, but I think he's gone. I just, maybe it's just blind hope on my end, but I don't know. I think once the NFL season wraps up, I think he will, like I said all along, I think he will conveniently, he won't get fired, but he will conveniently take an NFL position and that'll be that. So, but we'll see, I guess. I don't know. My own self-reference, I hope he's gone just for, like you said, I can't handle another year of just crazy negativity. I get so tired of the negativity. I mean, it just consumes people. So I'm ready to move on from the Brian Ferentz era one way or the other. It's just time for him to move on. It's for the program's sake. It's time for him to go find another job. And I don't care who comes in. It can be in-house, out-of-house, whatever. Something needs to change. There's a black as long as he's here. I think you're right. Even if he's an offensive line coach, there's going to be a black cloud hanging over where people are just going to, and the fact of the matter is whoever comes in, those same people will complain again, whoever it is anyway. But at least there'll be some positivity for a week or two. Cade McNamara is the most loved Iowa quarterback of all time until we go and get beat names. So then,
right.
But I don't know. My guess, and it's just purely a guess, is he will not be coaching at Iowa next year.
Well, and the one that makes the most sense, Bill O'Brien. There's been a lot of smoke about him going back to New England and becoming the offensive coordinator with the Patriots. Bill O'Brien, Brian Ferentz, they're good friends, and people making that connection. Brian goes to New England again, tight ends coach, offensive line coach, whatever it is, and finds a spot on that offensive staff, an offensive staff that certainly needs some help over there in New England. So that's the most logical destination for him if it does play out in that fashion. We'll take our final timeout. When we come back, Iowa basketball, and they get this thing turned around. Is there any hope? We'll talk about that as we continue here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Trent and Biz hanging out with you here today as we talk Hawkeye athletics. Iowa basketball, an 0-3 start in the Big Ten, a devastating loss to Eastern Illinois. Biz mentioned a little bit earlier, you were over in Nebraska, got to see that train wreck over there. One of the worst offensive performances of the Fran McCaffrey era. This team's off, and though they came back against Penn State over the weekend, got back in the game, got it within 2, an opportunity to tie or take the lead before the ball was tipped away. It was great. They also shot 6 out of 7 from 3 in the second half. This team is not going to shoot 6 out of 7 from 3 very often. It's a team that doesn't shoot it very well, but you're a more optimistic sort when it comes to Hawkeye athletics. How can this Iowa basketball team get it turned around?
Play like they did the second half. It's not so much the shooting, Trent, it's the shots. I mean, they went back to playing inside out. I mean, clearly Fran lit people up at half because you saw the first 10 possessions of the second half. It was just put your head down and drive. I mean, Tony Perkins went back to what he does best. We played inside out. I mean, Chris Murray played way more aggressive. I mean, we just being there live in Nebraska, I couldn't believe how tentative we looked. We just looked like a team that just had no confidence, no joy whatsoever. And that's just so weird to watch because you're so used to with Fran's teams, the offensive side of the ball is usually pretty basketball. I mean, it's just, Fran, even with bad Fran teams, we've never had problems scoring because usually they're just connected. They move the ball, they make the extra pass, they do all those things. And, they just hadn't been doing that. So, that second half was a step in the right direction, certainly. Are they going to go 6 for 7? No. But can they, this team's got enough talent. They can compete with most teams in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is not exactly dynamite. You watch Rutgers, Purdue. I watched Rutgers, Purdue 2 nights ago, and Purdue's the number 1 team in the nation, and they lose at home. Neither one of those teams have an insane amount of talent. They're both really good teams, but there's not a single Big Ten team this year that is just going to run us off the court on talent alone. Do I think we can turn it around? I don't know. This team doesn't look like they like playing together very well right now, and that's the biggest problem. And that's something you can't just flip a switch and do. But there were some signs of optimism. You asked, is there hope? Yes, there's hope. That second half seemed to be the Iowa team we're used to seeing. And, you get 4 out of 5 at home. You win, let's say you go 3-5, 3-2 in the next 5. All of a sudden you're 3-5 in the Big Ten, and you're at least you got hope going forward. So yes, I think there's hope. I'm not giving up on this team yet. There's a lot of deficiencies. They're not a great team by any means, but there's enough talent there. If they get it clicking, they'll be all right.
This stretch here coming up, starting tomorrow as they take on Indiana at home. 3 of the next 4, and 4 of the next 5, in fact, are at home. You have Indiana on Thursday. The lone road game is Sunday at Rutgers, and then home for Michigan, Maryland, Northwestern. At the 0-3 hole, coupled with the loss to Eastern Illinois, who today ranks 345 at Ken Pom, you have to go at minimum probably 12-8, maybe even 13-7, depending on what happens in the Big Ten tournament, to even get back on the bubble. That means here in this 5-game stretch, you got to go 4-1? I think that's kind of the hole that they have dug themselves at this point in time. 4-1 has to be the reality if they're going to get it done. So they're going to have to do it very quickly here. Obviously going to be playing without Patrick. That means Connor McCaffrey goes back to the lineup. And boy, I don't know if there's a way at this point that you can fix Peyton Sandford. You talked a little bit about what you saw from him. He is just so completely out of sorts, has not made a field goal, not a shot in Big Ten play, 0 of 18. Is there any way that you can turn Peyton Sandford around, or are we getting closer and closer to this becoming a lost cause?
Yeah. The only way it turns around is Peyton Sandford's got to turn around himself. The funny thing is I went to the very first game of the year with my dad, and he hit 3 threes in the first 4 minutes of that game. And I turned to my dad and said something about he may set the single season record for threes this year. Yeah. Because, you watch him when he's on, he's unstoppable because he's 6'8", B, he's got such a quick release that he can get it off against anybody, and C, he's when he's confident, I mean, he'll fire away. He'll shoot 10, 15 threes a game. You just don't see that right now. So I don't know. It's confidence is a hard thing, because when you lose it, how do you get it back? And so I don't know. I hope he's not a lost cause. I mean, especially with honestly, what he needs to do is come out and just fire. I mean, he needs to take 8 threes in the game. I mean, right now, as soon as he misses the first one, you can just tell it's over. And, I'd rather he go 0 for 8, I guess, than go 0 for 1, because he's just so gun shy right now. But I don't know. To me, this team, it's kind of what this team comes down to more than anything, Trent. The reason they played well that second half is Chris Murray took over. I mean, Chris Murray needs to be a superstar. He needs to be a superstar every minute of every game. I love the Murray twins. They're both unbelievable basketball players and unbelievable, ambassadors for Iowa basketball. They're great stories, but they both tend to kind of blend in more than they should. He needs to say, you know what, I am the best player on the court every single game. I don't care if he goes 3 for 25, but shoot 25 times. I mean, he's and you saw it that second half. He was unbelievable that second half. He changed the whole complexion of the game just by being more aggressive. There's times he didn't touch the ball for 5-6 minutes, and he seems fine with that. I mean, there's times you just got to go take the ball and be like, I'm going to take over. So, I mean, that's a simple thing. I mean, you can talk about Peyton Sanford all you want, but it really comes down to Chris Murray. If Chris Murray can put this team on his back, they've got a chance. If he can't, then they're in trouble.
Biz, it is Iowa basketball. The women's team also took a loss over the weekend. I know you make your way over to a lot of the women's games, and just another one defensively. Big time issues there. The second quarter was a disaster against the Illini. This women's team, Indiana's really good this year. Big Ten has got some tough teams overall. It's not like the SEC or the ACC, some of the top conferences in college basketball. But what do you think of this women's team? And regular season crown still a realistic goal, right?
Yeah, I watched that game on New Year's Day. I tip of the cap to Illinois. Illinois played great. I mean, I just thought Illinois played. They moved the basketball. They got the shots they wanted. They're athletic. I mean, at some point, I don't know. I'm not too worried about the Iowa women's basketball team. They are what they are. They're going to lose a few games because they're not the greatest defensive team in the world, but they also have the best player in the country, and she's going to keep you in every game. So, are they going to win the Big Ten? I don't think so. Their schedule is pretty darn hard. They get all the tough teams twice. And they got to go on the road against all the tough teams. So, but I think they can go 15-5 in the Big Ten, and that's going to get you. The key to them is they got to stay in the top 16. You got to get the home games, and then hopefully get the Sweet 16 and see what happens. I mean, as long as you're in the top 16 and you get 2 home games at Carver, they'll be all right.
Good stuff. Well, Biz, we will talk again soon. We'll not make it a month in between our conversations going forward. We'll break things down, hopefully get some positive vibes going with that basketball team, get on the right side. And of course, there's always news, and we'll see what's percolating on the offseason of Iowa football. Good talking again, Biz. Before we get out of here,
Stat Boy and I will be 2 of the 7,000 people at the game tomorrow night. So we'll cheer loud and try to make up for the fact there'll be no students and probably half empty stadium. So.
You got a business beat for us before we get out of here.
I do not, Trent. You popped this on me at the last minute. I mean, I think business beat. The obvious one is anybody and everybody that's listening, pray for DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, absolutely. Talked about that a little bit with LaShawn yesterday, and obviously seeing a teammate in that kind of situation. He hasn't dealt with anything like that, and most players haven't dealt with anything like that. It's one thing, guy tears an ACL. One of our good buddies, you saw that happen, right, with Dal tearing his ACL, and seeing that part of it. That's an injury. This is life-threatening, and just the way it goes, and we continue to have the prayers. Good stuff, Biz. We'll talk again soon.
All right, go Hawks.